Well, this is what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about this poor guy right here. Yeah, he's mad. No, I don't know him, but I like his face. Do you know him?
No, is he a real person?
I think he's a real person. But I'm just going to use his face. Because he's mad because he texted me and said, hey, I called you yesterday and you didn't pick up, sad face. So you hate me? And I'm thinking, wait, when did he call me? Oh yeah, now I remember, I was driving at the time. So, don't pick up your phone while you're driving and stuff like that. So once I finally got to a safe place and pulled over, then I typed out a really quick text and I said to him, you called when I was on the car. Now, my correction system on my phone it's gotten smarter now. It doesn't just correct spelling, it actually suggests grammar. Does yours do that? So the next time I pressed the button, I said, wait, I need to fix that. And I said, no, I mean, you called when I was under the car. No, that's not. No, you called when I was against the car. Which sounds like the police pulled me over. Hands on the car. Against the car, yeah. No, that's not going to be it. And then suggested, you called when I was over the car. Well, now that's a very strange kind of picture when you think about it. It sounds like you're a hunting trophy or something tied to the top, or I don't know what that means. Prepositions get in your way. No, you called when I was behind the car. It sounded like the car was busted at the time. Okay, now wait a second. So you stop and you go back to the word and you say, I'm going to type it in, forget the suggestions. You called when I was in the car and I was driving. So that's why. Now, I do this silly thing because it illustrates the fact that prepositions are very important in the English language. And there was a particular preposition that was used on Easter morning that was in the minds of the apostles that we seldom think about, but it's there, and it's in almost every passage that's there, the preposition that was there. Now, you might think the preposition has something to do with this. Here's this empty tomb, and they're waiting for Jesus to come out of the tomb. And you would think, because we say this today very often, he is risen from the dead, and the preposition there is from. So that's what you're waiting for, right? Well, yes and no. The apostles were really waiting for a different preposition to take place. That's what I want to focus on today, because when you realize this and start reading through the passages, you see it show up over and over and over again. And this preposition will tell you what was on their mind on Easter morning, because it was actually very simple and very direct, okay? Not all this high theology and stuff. And let's see if we can uncover it. So here we go. I'll give you a couple of passages. Here near the end of Jesus' prayer for the apostles, he says in 17:24, Father, I desire that they also whom you've given me may be with me where I am to see my glory that you've given me because you loved me before the foundation of the world. So this is Jesus praying for his apostles. So do you see the preposition that he was praying for? That one. That they may be with me, that they may be with me. Now, Jesus knows what's going to happen next. He knows he's going to be crucified. He knows he's going to be killed. And here at the end, Jesus is praying, Father, I want them to be with me. I don't want them to be separated. So the operating preposition for the morning is with. It's with. And this is what was on the apostles' minds all through the end of the accounts. They wanted to be with Jesus. Jesus prayed to the Father that he would be with them. It's all with. It's very relational. Let me show you some more, because it amazes you. So here, when we have the crucifixion and Jesus goes into the tomb, and the promise of being with Jesus is still lingering there, as every minute ticks by and the tomb is still closed and Jesus is not out, you have to wonder, is his promise to be with me? Is he going to stand me up on this appointment? Or is this really going to happen? It's really an appointment that's waiting to happen because the apostles know Jesus said, I will be with you. But he said some things just before he was crucified that caused them really serious anxiety about the withness of Jesus. Let me show you some of those. If you go back to John 13, little children, yet a little while I am with you. You'll seek me, and just as I said to the Jews, so now I also say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. So here's these guys who spent 3 years with Jesus, who want to follow the rest of their lives with Jesus, and at the end of these 3 years, he says, sorry, I'm going someplace you can't go. It's been great being with you this little time. This is why the with preposition is on their mind all the way through. Jesus said, I'm with you just a little bit longer. Well, let's keep going and see what he says, because it's the with thing that really is messing up their heads. Just a few verses later, Peter said to him, Lord, where are you going? Because they want to be with him. It's the with preposition. And Jesus answers, and he says, well, Jesus answered, where I am going, you cannot follow me now, but you will follow afterward. Okay, so it looks like it's just a temporary situation. But Peter comes back and says, well, maybe it's a level of commitment we need. So Peter says boldly, Lord, why can I not follow you now? I will lay down my life for you. And those of us who've read ahead know what happens. Jesus answered, will you lay down your life for me? Truly, truly, I say to you, the rooster will not crow till you've denied me 3 times. So here's Peter saying, I want to be with you, I want to be with you, I want to be with you. If what it takes is a commitment of the will to be with you and sacrifice, I've got it. I'll do it, because I'll do anything to be with you. It's with you. Tell me what it's going to take, I'll do it. And it wasn't just hours where he completely fell apart. So he did want to be with Jesus. He did want to be with him. But although the spirit is willing, the flesh is weak. And that's where we get to. He couldn't do it. But that is what's compelling him to do this. I want to be with Jesus. Tell me what it'll cost. I'll do it. But he failed. He classically failed. We go on. Jesus in chapter 14, just a little after this, says this to the apostles. While they're having this whole discussion, in my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I'll come again and take you to myself, that where I am, you may be also. And you know the way where I'm going. Well, see, this is all a with thing. I'm telling you, I'm going to prepare a place for you, and I want you to come there so you can be with me. With is what it's all about. This, and in hours, we're going to be in the middle of separation from Jesus. So he's assuring them, I want you to be with me. I'm preparing for you to be with me. We're going to be with each other. With is there. And you know the way where I'm going. Now, I don't have time to follow what happens after that, but you know what happens right after he says, you know the way? Do you remember this story? Then one of the apostles speaks up and says, I don't know the way. Right? Because they're not sure what's going to happen next. And Jesus says, I've got it all figured out. I'm going to have to prepare a place for you, and you know the way, which implies just come on and let's go. Hey, let's go. Right? Let's go down there. So if we were going to go down to Kent's grocery store, I'd say, let's go down there, get some food for the morning, and I'd say, let's all go. You know the way, unless you're from out of town. It's just down the block. So, the apostles are listening to Jesus right here and saying, we want to be with you, with you. We want to be with you. But if you're going someplace, we don't know the way. Which is where Jesus gives his super famous phrase, I am the way and the truth and the life. And no one comes to the Father but through me. So that's where that comes out. But it's really all an issue about with. The apostles through this entire section are concerned about how they're going to be with Jesus. And so here they are, waiting at the tomb that's sealed. Time ticks by, day 1, day 2, day 3. Jesus said he wants to be with us. He told us he's going to go prepare a place for us, with. But you know what? Frankly, my appointment's going to be stood up with Jesus if it gets to day 4 and there's no Jesus, or day 5 and there's no Jesus. And then everything that Jesus has ever said to us will be worth nothing. Because he banked everything on coming back and saying, I'm going to be with you. And so here's this anxiety of the stood up date. That's what's going on in the apostles' mind as these days go on and Jesus does not come out. Will he ever be with us again? Well, we know the answer is yes. And that's good. And Jesus promised it. He promised it. But that's the anxiety that you have on the Easter weekend, is not so much the anxiety about whether or not the grandest theology that comes from the death and the resurrection, theology, big thoughts, and you can write a lot of theology about what happened on the cross. But for the apostles, it wasn't deep theology. It was just, will he ever be with us again? This is the man that we left homes and family, who we walked with every day. We saw incredible things. And I said to myself, if I get a chance, I'm never going back home and fishing again. I'm going to follow this guy for the rest of my life because I've seen things and understood life like I've never understood before because of him. And now he's dead. And so as I check my watch on the tomb, is he ever going to come back? Is he ever going to be true to his word? Will I ever be with him again? See, what happens on Easter is we take the empty tomb and the risen Christ, and we theologicize it so much. that we lose the real fundamental issue, which was very clear for the apostles and actually clear for everyone else, the women that come to the tomb, everyone. They had fallen in love simply with who Jesus is. And that's as profound as you can make it. They'd fallen in love with who he was, and now very unjustly he seemed to have been killed. And from a relational yearning deep in their heart, they said, we want to be with him. Is this the end of that? Is this the end of that? Now, you'll find if you read later on, Peter decides he's just going to go back to work. He goes back fishing up in the north in Galilee. Some of them are not sure. There are two guys who were, after the crucifixion, were walking back to their home in Emmaus. It's about 7 miles west of Jerusalem. As they're walking, they're talking to each other. The passage tells us they're talking to each other, and then suddenly Jesus joins them in this walk, and they can't recognize him. The risen Jesus is with them. They can't recognize him. And he asks them, what's the long face? What's going on? And they tell him. And they said, and this is Jim's translation, they said, well, there's this Jesus guy, and we thought he was the one. We thought this was the guy. And as they're walking back to Emmaus, Jesus is not risen in general knowledge. They're one of the first ones to see him. Jesus has to tell them, wait a second. And now what he could have done while he's walking with them is said, you thought he was the guy? Ah, it's me! And they could go down the road dancing and stuff like that. But he doesn't do that. Instead, what he does is he goes back to the Old Testament, and from the entire Old Testament shows how in the Old Testament it spoke of this Jesus and that this would have to happen. And he reassured them about this was going according to plan. This was written down hundreds of years before. This was not an accident. This is not things out of control. This is exactly the way it was supposed to go. Let me show you in the Psalms. Let me show you in Isaiah. Let me show you through the entire Old Testament. And it says that he taught them as they walked back to Emmaus about how this had to happen. And then they finally recognized him. So really, the angst that goes on Easter morning isn't about the theology of the resurrection. It's about, will I be with him? It's as simple as that. Will I be with him? Will he be good to his word to be with me? But there's a huge blockage in the road, and that blockage is death. Can Jesus surmount death so that I can be with him still? And that's as complex as Easter morning gets. That's as complex as it gets. A couple more places. John 14, later on he says to them, this is before he's crucified, I will not leave you as orphans. I'll come to you yet a little while, and the world will see me no more. But you will see me, talking about his resurrection appearances. And he goes on, because I live, you also will live. Now, if they were remembering this during the silent days of the tomb and the burial, they're thinking, he said, because I live, you will live. Well, what if in a couple of days he doesn't live? Do we all die? My life itself is tied up with him living. And in a real sense, because they had such a deep relationship and a loving relationship with Jesus, in a real sense, they're thinking, if he doesn't come back and he's not with me and I'm not with him, life does almost look like death. Because while they were with him, read the Gospels. Oh my gosh, read the Gospels. It was electric. Every day they'd wake up and some other crazy thing would happen. And all the apostles had to do every morning, it was very simple. This is very simple. Wake up in the morning, have a little breakfast, and say, today I'm going to follow him because yesterday was incredible. I'm going to follow him. And day after day after day, you see amazing things. Your heart falls in love with him. You see how his compassion for people who should not have compassion is demonstrated. You see him actually hug a leper. You weren't even supposed to get within 10 feet of a leper. And he hugged a leper. He loved people that no one else loved, tax collectors and women of ill repute, and you go on and on down the list. He was challenged for the fact that he had so much compassion for these people. And he said to the Pharisees, when they challenged him on that, he said, listen, I didn't come for people who think they're okay. I came for people who know they're not. I came to heal broken hearts. So they watch this day after day, and they fall in love with him. And they watch their watches, sundials. They watch their watches as the time goes on in this Easter weekend, and they wonder, will that guy ever come back? But he promised, I'll be with you. He promised, I'll be with you. In John 16, before the crucifixion, Jesus knew that they wanted to ask him, so he said to them, he headed them off, is this what you're asking yourselves? What is meant by saying a little while and you will see me, and then a little while and you will not see me, then a little while you will see me? Truly, truly, I say to you, you will weep and lament, but the world will rejoice. You will be sorrowful, but your sorrow will turn into joy. He's even reading their minds about their anxiety about the withness of being with Jesus. Is that what you're dealing with? And he says, I'll tell you the truth. Pretty soon, you're going to grieve. And everybody else around you is going to be having a party because I'm dead. But that's going to flip around. You'll be sorrowful, but your sorrow will be turned into joy. And he goes on. Jesus knew they wanted to ask him, so he says, listen, it's like this. When a woman is giving birth, she has sorrow because her hour has come, but when she's delivered the baby, she no longer remembers the anguish. By the way, is that true, ladies? No, I didn't think so. Just checking. Okay. Largely, you don't remember the anguish. It's a comparative thing, so get off it. Okay. So, okay. For joy that the human being has now been born into the world. So also you have sorrow now, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice, and no one will take your joy from you. So it's like having a baby. It does hurt in the process, and there's no doubting that, and there will be sorrow and there will be pain. But I guarantee you, Jesus says, that's going to be replaced with joy. Just like when a baby's born. It's going to be replaced with joy. So here they are, waiting at the table, checking their watches. I want to be with him. He said he wants to be with me. He says I'm going to be in pain for a little while, and I'm in pain right now. Will he come back? Will I be with him? Luke 23. They probably thought during the crucifixion, this is a scene during the crucifixion. You know, there was the two robbers that were with him. In the passages, we know that the two robbers, one on each side of him, were hurling abuses at him throughout the early parts of the crucifixion. Both of them were. Both of them. Things like, oh, well, you're such a big dude. You're the king of the Jews. So why don't you get us all off the crosses here and just fix everything? You know, they really were criticizing him, abusing him from the other sides of the cross. But then one of the Gospels tells us that one of the guys changes. And it's Luke's Gospel. He changes his mind. And we looked at this a couple of years ago. What would change his mind from the view on the cross to change his mind from hurling abuse at Jesus to saying what he says here? And look what he says. This is what the thief who changes says. He says, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Now, you got to stop and look at that. He's hanging on a cross. I mean, they are both hours away from dying. What kingdom are we talking about? This is not some grand procession. We're going to take over Jerusalem and Israel. We're all dying here. And yet that thief understood something about this king, that his kingdom wasn't here, but it was soon thereafter. I mean, just the question itself shows a ton of understanding. And not only that there's a kingdom coming, but then he has the gall as a thief who has already self-proclaimed himself in the other Gospels as being worthy of this death. He has the gall to turn to Jesus and say, so can you put in a good word for me when you come into your kingdom? Who would have the gall to do that? So he understands something about not only the king and his kingdom, but also about his grace to be part of that kingdom. I don't know how he understood all this, but he understood all this. And in that one short sentence right there, he's saying, Jesus, you're the king. Your kingdom is still to come, even though things look pretty bad right now. And although I don't deserve it, will you remember me when you come into your kingdom? I mean, just put in a word for me. I'm not asking for anything except that when you get there, can I be part of it? Very simple. And that's very simply what we do when we follow Jesus today. You're the king. Your kingdom's coming. It even starts partially right now. I don't deserve this, but can you remember me? Can I be part of that? So what's Jesus' response to this change? And he said to him, truly I say to you, today you will be, there's that word, with me in paradise. Now he could have said a whole bunch of other super theological things. Today, my friend, the thief, grace will overwhelm you, and even though you can't deserve it, I'm going to, my blood will atone for you, and the soteriology of salvation is all about what's going on in front of your eyes today, and aren't you a lucky guy that you have to... He could have gone through all of this stuff, but all he said was what the guy really was on his heart, the preposition with. That's really all that was on his heart. He wanted to be wherever Jesus was going to be. He saw Jesus on the cross, that he said, I want all of who you are. And Jesus responds to his heart, the preposition of his heart, with, and he says, today you will be with me. Personal. It's a personal pronoun. I think the apostles were starting to remember this. while Jesus is in the tomb. Remember when that thief was on there? Remember what Jesus said? Jesus didn't say your sins are forgiven. He said you will be with me today. Because that's what you want. With Jesus. So the time clicks on, the day goes. People start to lose some of their enthusiasm that it's ever going to happen. This, by the way, is a replica of a first century tomb. And it was always carved into a solid stone hillside. It was partially to keep grave robbers out and stuff like that. But you would find a piece of extruding rock out of the side of a hillside. And then you'd go in there with hand chisels and you'd chisel out a cave inside there. That would be your family tomb, because you couldn't do this very much. So, this would go through generations of a family. You'd carve out a niche in the rock, relatively big inside, but not that big, kind of small. And you would take the bodies of someone who's recently deceased, you'd wrap them in linens, you put some spices on them, and you'd stick them on a shelf, literally. There was like these benches, there's shelves carved in the inside of that tomb. Put them on that shelf, and then given enough time, the body would decay and decompose, and in about a year's time, you'd come back and you'd process the body and just lift the bones out and put it in a bone box. Kind of a grisly thing to do on a year anniversary, but that's what they would do. They had to do that because you ran out of space, other people needed the space. So that's what they would do. And then to keep people out, they would roll this gigantic round rock in front of it. And why round? Well, because it'll roll. One way, it'll roll pretty good. In fact, they'd cut a channel right in front of that. In the stone itself, and you can see it. You can see it right here. There's a channel that it's actually laying in, and the channel is sloped slightly downhill to close it. And if you look at this picture closely, you'll see there's a wedge right there. It's holding it open right now. So here's the deal. Jesus dies. They wrap his body. They stick his body on the shelf inside here. They take the wedge out from under the round rock. It rolls shut, boom, and it's closed. And to open it takes, 6 to 12 men, because it's very heavy. It's very heavy. And that's where he is all those days. No sign of any progress. No sign of coming good on the promise to be with. No signs that anything is going to follow through what Jesus promised. It looks like we're being stood up for our appointment. And that's the anxiety of the hearts of the apostles. Will we ever be with him ever again? Forget about all the theology. Forget about all that stuff. We just want Jesus. And he's been killed. And he promised that we would be with him. So Easter morning happens, and there he is. In fact, the women find him first. And when they come to the tomb, it's rolled open again. As they're coming to the tomb, they're saying to each other, who was supposed to take care of opening the tomb? You? We're going to do it? How are we going to open the tomb? Because they were going to put spices on the body. And when they get there, the tomb's open. And then they find an angel there, or angels, both counts. And they say, listen, he's not here anymore. What? He's not here? Did someone take him? No, he's risen. He's risen. He's risen. And she goes back and tells the apostles. They're incredulous, because I think they're right on the edge of losing faith that this witness was ever going to happen. They're incredulous. They don't believe them, so what they do is they have a foot race back to the tomb to check it out for themselves. And they look inside and go, oh, he's not here. And I think somewhere in the text it got dropped out where the women said to him, we told you that. But maybe they didn't. We don't know. By the way, it's actually one interesting tidbit of authenticity about the historical account, because in the ancient times you never gave to a woman the responsibility of being a herald of good news. That always went to a man because he was trustworthy. And yet, that's just culture. I'm not saying that's right. That's just, back off, Linda. I'm not saying that's right. But that's what they would do. So I know. So here the women come back with the news. God gave them the honor of saying, you announce to the world that he's risen. I'm giving you that honor. He gives that to the women. So that's just something you wouldn't do if you were making up the story. Well, let's bring this to a close. They see him. They meet with him. They talk with him. By the way, there's a pretty cool movie. I don't know if it's still out right now, called Risen. I don't know if you've seen that. We saw a special preview viewing several months ago with the producer, but it's interesting. It's the whole account of the resurrection through the eyes of an unbelieving Roman lieutenant, tribune, I forget what they call him. Centurion, something like that, yeah. It's really fascinating. It's fictional, but it's based on the historic context to this. It just gives you another set of secular eyes through which you can look and see this whole thing happen. But anyway, Jesus does appear, and he sees them, and they talk to him, and they finally, their hearts are reassured he's with us. But now he's acting like he's going away again. Remember this account? He's acting like not only is he acting like it, he's saying it. I have to go away so another comforter can come. But this time the anxiety of the apostles is not there. You don't see it in any of the passages. They seem to understand that even though in some sense now, after the resurrection, Jesus is going away, still in some way, he's going to be here. And we can trust him for that. All through the Old Testament, God was saying to Israel, listen, you don't have to fear because I'm with you. The withness of God changed the circumstance every time. Every time. There's places where it says, not only do you not have to fear, but you know what? You don't even have to worry about riches or income or being able to buy your food. Because I am your God and I am with you. It's the nearness of God that changes the whole context of life. So I think after the resurrection appearance of Jesus and he starts talking about leaving again, I think they in a maturely way get this somehow. And so at the very closing words of Matthew's gospel, the last things we hear Jesus say post-resurrection to the apostles, he says the magic preposition. Watch this. Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I'm with you always, even to the end of the age. Yes! That's exactly what they wanted to hear. They have spent the entirety of this horrible Passion Week wondering, will he be with me? Will he be with me? Will he be with me? And now in his closing breath to them, he says, I'll be with you always, even to the end of the age. You can stop worrying about that. I'm here. He said it to the thief on the cross. Tomorrow you'll be with me in paradise. So really, this withness with Jesus seems to extend beyond just the physical. And that's what he's trying to tell us. This withness with Jesus, they understood, was going to go on to even the end of the age. The resurrected Jesus can, in fact, be a relationship in your life. You can be with him even right now. Even right now. And that's what these extended. That's why if Jesus didn't raise from the dead, Paul says, oh my gosh, if Jesus didn't raise from the dead, we should be the most pitied people on the earth because we're still sitting at that table waiting for the appointment, and he's not showing. And he's not showing, and he's not showing. And Jesus reneged on his promise to be with. But Paul says we don't have to be there because he did show. And the promise of being with him extends even to the end of the age, which, by the way, has not happened yet. And those of us in this room who have woken up every morning like the apostles and said, I want to follow you today because I've fallen in love with who you are, they can come to him and take him at his word and take him at his promise and say, Jesus, I want to be with you today. And in a real, relational sense, he is. Figment of my imagination? Someone's asked me that before. Your relationship with Jesus, that's just a figment of your imagination? Did you have one of those little friends when you were little that you talked to? You know, imaginary friends? Just like a big imaginary friend? Well, I didn't have an imaginary friend. I wished I had because I didn't have many friends. But there's something different going on here because I have actually fallen in love with this Jesus. I don't know how I can make an imaginary friend that I fall in love with. And it's love. It's not just wishful thinking, it's love. There is a way in the 21st century to experience a relationship with this God who came in the flesh, who said, I will be with you. And the entirety of the Bible, Old Testament to New, is really a consolidated picture of a God saying, I'm going to do everything it takes so that I can be with you and you can be with me. It's always been a relationship. It's been nothing else. It's always been that. And in fact, in the coming of Jesus at his birth, they said, and you shall call his name Emmanuel, which translated means There's the magic preposition, God with us. God wants us to be with him. And Jesus himself says earlier in that passage, I'll tell you what eternal life is. Eternal life is knowing the Father, is knowing God. That's where real life is. And there's something about our experiences too when we experience life in relationships that we know that real life has little to do with the style of my car or the bigness of my house or the income I bring home or any of that kind of stuff. It seems as though as I look back in life, the most valuable things are connected to people and relationships. Am I alone in this? I'm getting a lot of, well, I don't think so, Jim. Cars are pretty nice. No, in the end, there's life in relationship. We're made for relationship. And we experience with people, and God, our Creator, has made us to desire relationship with him. And he promises, I'll be with you, even to the end of the age. So all I wanted to simply challenge you with this morning, you don't have to do anything I say or believe anything I say, but I do want to tell you that that was what drove the apostles at the end of Jesus' life. We want to be with him, and he was good to his promise. And he can be good to his promise to you today. All you have to do here at home, in the car, while you're texting, I don't care, you can come to him and say, I think I want to know who you are, God. If this is really true, if there's really life in knowing you and being in a relationship with you, I don't know what I'm saying, but I want you. I want you. And he is faithful, and he comes to us and draws us to himself. And life happens in relationship with him, who won't leave us, but he'll be with us until the end of the age. Now, a lot of Christian theology and doctrine and ethics and morality, they miss the point. The point of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation is a God who loves us so much that he wants us to be whole people, and that wholeness comes in relationship with him. That's as simple as it is. And throughout the entire angst of the Easter weekend, the apostles asked themselves, will he be with us? And then he rose, and they said, yep, and we'll have him until the end of the age. And that's the promise. And you can just do that privately with God yourself. No magic you got to do. No papers you have to sign. No water you got to get dipped in. You can just ask him, and he'll come. So let's finish this morning. Let me pray. Father in heaven, what an incredible thing this is, that with all those people with their breath held, wondering whether or not Jesus would be good to his promise, will he be with us? Will he be with us? He then is. That not even death itself can get in the way of the purpose of God to draw us to himself, that we might be with him. Not even death. Not even death. And Lord, I have to imagine the surprise on the thief's face when you responded back to him and said, it's a deal, today. Today you'll be with me. Today you'll be with me in paradise. And Lord, like the thief on the cross, we all know that we deserve so much less. In fact, we deserve judgment. There's so much about us that's so messed up, that's so broken, that our heart despairs over in that brokenness. And yet you don't ask us to clean ourselves up or get our acts together or do any of that kind of stuff before you say yes to us. All you wait is for us to say to you, you're the king. You're in charge of a kingdom. Will you put in a good word for me when you get there? Because I want to be with you. So God, I pray for those who are just understanding this. Give them an understanding through your Spirit. And Lord, for those of us who've called us to yourself, we have been so shocked, so amazed, so overwhelmed by the nearness of you, and we can recite along with the psalmist that the nearness of God is my good. That's my good. The nearness of God. And so, Lord, break into our lives. Introduce yourself to us. Because, Lord, we're tired of phony religion, and we're tired of working, and we're tired of trying to please everybody. But there's something about you that if you'll have us, we want to be yours. And you say, okay. So thank you for this great morning, and thank you for the good news of the resurrection, and thank you for not standing us up while we were waiting in our appointment for you. You're good to your word, and even death itself couldn't stop your promise to us. So thanks now in Jesus' name. Amen.